All right, good morning. My name is Jeff Orrock here at the National Weather Service office in Wakefield, sitting in for Katie Carter this morning. She's currently working with VDM leadership and the governor's cabinet as we're working into this storm. So I'll do the briefing for today. Been some changes since yesterday. I think obviously what still remains the same is we're looking at really a major to extreme winter storm for a good portion of the Commonwealth. A little bit of the heavy snowfall has pivoted a little bit to the north. That's not necessarily a great thing. But we are still looking at some pretty high snowfall totals. It's just a matter of, who gets into the heaviest snowfall. But because the snow totals may be decreasing for some folks across the Commonwealth, that also means the forecast for ice, which is sleet and freezing rain, is also increasing. So not a great thing. And we may be more of a wintry mixed mess as we go through the weekend. And so we'll kind of cover that and kind of work things through. So this is a little bit of a table of timing we use kind of for the big picture of how each day may actually line up. And you notice for snow, for I'd say late Saturday afternoon, evening, and overnight, and again on Sunday, we've actually flipped over to now extreme amounts of snowfall, especially, I'd say central Virginia, portions of the Shenandoah Valley in northern Virginia. And now we've also gone even significant for ice, mainly for the southern parts of Virginia, but that extends really from the far southwest Virginia to south central Virginia and maybe a little bit of southeast. So a lot of the southern third of Virginia could be getting into some pretty significant ice. We've also gone to extreme for the cold temperatures next week. So not a great combination, and don't like to see these colors flipping into the red and purples because we're getting onto the kind of the edge of what we are typically used to experiencing. I'm not going to read through the bullets here. You guys, the email went out. You can kind of see the highlights. Main thing, nothing's really changed here as far as I say the overall pattern has not changed. I think the big question that we're dealing with for the weekend, I'm going to pull up the fronts here. So just kind of show the weather maps in the big picture. What we're going to be looking at, Friday, no issues. It could be a little bit of light precip. This may be a little bit overdone, but there could be a passing little shower or maybe a flurry. We're not expecting any issues on Friday. What we're going to be watching out for, you see this low pressure system coming across Texas. That's what we're going to be watching as it kind of tracks to our south. Really cold air coming in from the north. This is an Arctic air mass. You see it's a very strong high pressure coming right down out of the Arctic. At the same time, we have a storm system that's really dragging across the deep south. So Saturday, looking like quite a bit of snowfall across the region. And then what's going to happen Saturday night and Sunday is the system kind of jumps out here to the Gulf Stream along the coast. And by Sunday, we have this area of low pressure forming somewhere off the Carolinas. This is where things get very, very messy because now what happens is as the storm system develops along the coast, it is going to push warmer air inland into parts of the region. And so with that, maybe becoming more sleet, a little bit more freezing rain. And the fact that this is intensifying off the coast does also mean somebody's going to get into some very heavy snow and some very heavy snow rates, especially I'd say north of Richmond, northern Virginia, the Shenandoah Valley. As this system increases its intensity offshore, could see some really heavy snow. Somebody could also get into some very heavy sleet. And I'm talking about sleet in accumulation in inches, not just a little bit. So this becomes a fairly potent storm here, given how cold it is and the fact that it is looking like it's going to try to strengthen as it moves up off the coast. By the time you get into Monday, the storm system should be pulling away. But even here, notice that you see this strip of snow even in the east. So this means the system may actually last even through Sunday night. So it may be a little bit longer duration than what we have our forecasting earlier. So we'll step through this. This is the probability right now of major snow impacts. And so these are very high probabilities, a 50% probability or up to almost 90% probability. Really, I'd say kind of along the north of 64. It does bleed down here towards Lynchburg. So, right now, these are the areas where we're expecting maybe some of the heaviest snowfall. Right there around Richmond, kind of the I-64 corridor, in the Tri-Cities area. The reason why the snow threat may be a little bit lower is because it's a lot of sleet. I mean, we could be getting, many inches of snow in Richmond and then also several inches of sleet and maybe even a little bit of freezing rain. So that's not great news. So again, this is just for the major probability of just major snow impacts. Even seeing some probabilities of extreme snow impacts. So, you're seeing anywhere from a a 20 to 30% probability, especially in Northern Virginia here, of extreme snowfall impacts. And that's very, very significant. I mean, to see even a low probability of extreme is definitely worth taking note of. So just be aware of that. For ice impacts, this is what we've got to watch out for, is that the probability of ice is increasing. And so you see here on the left, the areas that we may see as some impacts from freezing rain really extend from the Tri-Cities and Richmond, all the way back here to Danville, and also for far Western Virginia. And these probabilities right now are increasing with every single model update. It's getting a little bit more and more icy right now. Here on the right is the probability where we might see, I'd say, more moderate impacts. And this is probably underdone. And this will be where we may be seeing probabilities of some significant power outages. So maybe just west of Hampton Roads, Williamsburg might be able to get in on this. Tri-Cities might be getting in on this, where we're starting to see some more of those significant impacts, even back towards Danville. And again, we're starting to see a little bit of an increase in far Western Virginia as well, as far as ice probabilities. So let's kind of look at the models. I'm going to just show you something here side by side without getting too far into it. But we're going to just basically step through the differences of what we were briefing yesterday to today. And so the most recent model here is on the left, and yesterday's model is here on the right. So remember, your left is the most recent. The right is the older one that we were briefing yesterday. So things are pretty similar. Not much going on Friday. Maybe a passing sprinkle, passing shower. Not nothing. No big deal. As we start to approach a little bit closer here, this is getting into early Saturday morning. This is about 7 a.m. Saturday. Not much difference in the two runs. Snow is just starting to maybe move across Tennessee, Western Carolina, not really up into Virginia yet. And this is 7 a.m. Saturday. Snow does start to spread into the west here sometime, maybe I'd say mid to late Saturday morning, probably just barely starting to accumulate. And then as we go through time, again, not a huge difference. This is actually getting into Saturday afternoon. So see a lot of snow, basically overspreading, especially I'd say 64 south by the time we get into Saturday afternoon. Get into Saturday evening, and really by then the snow is really starting to push north across the entire Commonwealth. And so this is by around, I'd say 1 a.m. Sunday morning. Everybody's getting into some pretty good snow, seeing accumulations everywhere. The difference is now, if you look here on the left, this ice line, the sleet and freezing rain line, is much further north than it was in the previous runs. And as we go through Sunday, you see this sleet and freezing rain pushing up into the Commonwealth. So this is Sunday morning, right around 10 a.m. This is getting into, I'd say, Sunday afternoon by about 1. And so now you're seeing quite a bit of a difference where you're seeing more sleet here. We went from good heavy snow to heavy sleet. Northern Virginia, Shenandoah Valley, just heavy snow. Notice how the blues here are much darker than what they were before. So, we're looking at a lot more heavy snow now for the Shenandoah, Northern Virginia. And now Richmond's had several inches of snow. And now all of a sudden, now we're changing over to maybe heavy snow, changing over to really heavy sleet. Keep going through the afternoon, continues to push north. This is getting into late afternoon, early evening, and you get this band of freezing rain. And this band of freezing rain, this purple, could extend back to the Tri-Cities, come back here to Emporia, even back into Danville. But again, Northern Virginia locked into that heavy snowfall. Richmond is the battleground, as well as parts of Southwest Virginia here, kind of the battleground. But still, it's still a lot of frozen precipitation, and everything's accumulating really, really quickly. So Sunday, we're accumulating something all day long. Far Southeast Virginia, I'd say maybe Hampton, and I'd say Norfolk, Portsmouth, Chesapeake East might get into some brief rain. I don't know if you'll get much rain west of Suffolk. I don't think you'll get much rain, up in Williamsburg West. So I think it's going to be a sharp line here, and the rain may kick in at the coast, but it won't last but so long. Going ahead into Sunday night, this is actually now getting into almost about 10 p.m. Sunday night. So now what you're noticing the difference here is the earlier model had the event ending. Now that's because the storm system looks like it's going to be more intense off the coast. It's still snowing into Sunday night. So we've been snowing now for a good 24 hours. Snow, sleet, freezing rain. It's been going on for 24 hours. That's a long period of time for us, longer than usual. Usually most of our winter events happen within 12 hours. So this is a good solid 24-hour event or longer. Push into the overnight hours. This is actually getting into early Monday morning. You do see things starting to kind of end finally by about, let's say, maybe 2 a.m. Monday morning, and things do start to kind of pull out. So it may linger a little bit longer through Sunday evening for a lot of us over the Commonwealth, kind of gradually ending from west to east, but it could be kind of a long duration event. Looking at the probabilities here, we don't want to get too much into the exact snow totals, but I think this paints the picture still. The left-hand image is a probability of 8 inches of snow or more. So, maybe far southeast Virginia, they only get maybe about 4 inches of snow before they change over, 3 to 4 inches before they change over to sleet and rain. But then as you push up towards Williamsburg, you get back in I-95 corridor, the probability of 8 inches of snow goes up to 40% or more. Central Virginia at 60% probability of 8 inches of snow, so that's a very high probability. Even in the Western Virginia, still about a 45 to 50% probability of getting 8 inches of snow. So that's where you're going to get quick snow accumulations, and then it's going to start to mix with a lot of sleet, and then that's going to kind of mess up your snow totals. Northern Virginia, especially once you get, I'd say, Richmond north, pretty much almost definite probabilities of getting at least 8 inches. And in fact, even if a foot of snow here on the right, there's still, a third of the models are saying we could get a foot of snow in Richmond, but before we mix over to sleet, it may be kind of a weird snow sleet combo, but still some pretty good accumulations. As you get back out towards Roanoke, kind of the same thing, could still be making a run at a foot of snow. But as we push up 81 up the Shenandoah Valley, basically a 54% probability of a foot. So that's telling you that half of all the models right now are saying you're going to get a foot of snow or more. It could be even more than this. So, anything in these oranges and the bright oranges, I'd say is a really good probability of getting a foot or more. So it kind of shows you that threat area there for getting the real heavy snow. Even in Richmond and this little red area here where it looks a little bit more like the dark red in the 12-inch probability, the reason why the snow totals there may be a little bit lower and is because it's a lot of sleet. So you could still be talking 8-9 inches of snow, and then a lot of sleet on top of that, like a couple of inches of sleet. So it's not like the event is ending and we're going to be getting out of the woods. It's actually making things worse. All right, this is not really what we want to hear. So just be aware of that. This is the freezing rain potential. This has increased. We've just updated this morning. On the left is the probability of a 1/4 inch of ice, and so even up I-95 corridor to Richmond, Richmond has about maybe a 45% probability of ice. But once you get to the Tri-Cities south, the probability of getting that 1/4 inch of freezing rain that could cause power outages is really starting to jump up on us, and even extends east, over to Franklin and near Suffolk. I'm also seeing those probabilities of ice increase towards Galax, getting out in the far western part of Virginia. See, that's starting to also see an increase in the probability of getting a decent coating. This is a 1/4 inch. So this is our warning thresholds where we do start to expect to see power outages increasing. The right is even a little bit more concerning because now this is a probability of a 1/2 inch of ice. So now you're really getting into very significant tree damage, power outages. And again, you kind of see here, Tri-Cities south is where those probabilities are the greatest. Extend a little bit east towards Franklin, going down 58, and then going out west, Galax, and even the far western Virginia. They still have I'd say a concerning probability for a 1/2 inch of ice, 37%. So out towards Kingsport, that tells you a third of the models are saying you might get this much ice. So this has been a little bit of the changing trend here, is to bring a little bit more freezing rain and especially more sleet to a lot of southern Virginia. So that's going to make the roads worse. Also going to increase the potential for power outages with this event. I think if we do get into freezing rain, I think it's mainly going to be probably Sunday afternoon. I think Sunday morning is still mostly snow, heavy snow. And I think as the warm air comes in, maybe during the day, that's when we change over to freezing rain. And then remember, and sleet. And then remember, after that, we go back to snow Sunday night as the storm system moves away. So it's just a great big mess. I'm trying to figure out when this thing may start, kind of in the bigger terms. Probably Saturday afternoon in the west, could be even early afternoon that we start to see snow moving in from the west, starting to see some light accumulations. For most of central Virginia, I say south central Virginia, probably going to be more like, I'd say, mid to late afternoon. Probably going to be closer to, I'd say, really late afternoon and evening across northern Virginia. But basically later in the afternoon and Saturday evening is when this is going to kick in. And then we should see the snow reaching the coast by Saturday evening with accumulations. And I think we're going to go from light snow to pretty heavy snow fairly quickly Saturday evening. I think it's going to be like light snow at first, and I think as we get into sunset and later Saturday night, those rates are going to increase, and they're really going to start to increase. I think after midnight, Saturday night into Sunday morning, it's really going to start to increase those snow rates. We'll have more exact snow rates in later forecasts, but I think we're going to have 2 inch plus an hour rates at times with this event. One thing we also want to mention, especially since we may be talking about more ice and potential power outages, the main thing here are the wind chills. So, it's going to be breezy throughout this event and even breezy into early next week. And these are the wind chills here on the right. So you can see that the weekend wind chills are pretty much in the single digits to the teens. And then the event, is basically going to be Saturday night through Sunday, maybe into early Monday morning. But then look at these wind chills Monday and Tuesday. Very, very, very cold. Negative wind chills across almost the entire state. Wind chills during the day, even on Tuesday, pretty much in the low teens, maybe around 20 at the coast. And these cold temperatures continue. So that's one thing we got to watch out for, is that when this thing actually ends Monday, the temperatures will be probably in the upper 20s to low 30s, maybe upper 20s there when this thing actually ends on Monday. But Monday night, by Tuesday morning, these are the low temperatures across the area. So it's going to be one big block of ice. Everything, no matter what it is, water, ice, snow, it's all going to start to compact and freeze. And so this is going to be a big problem. It's going to be a big problem for the trees. You're going to have ice hanging in the trees for a long period of time with a little bit of a breeze. It's going to be a problem for the roads because all this is going to retighten up. Everything's going to freeze. Very, very cold temperatures. The high on Tuesday, probably not breaking freezing anywhere in the state. And Wednesday, these temperatures on Wednesday, honestly, are probably too warm. We're probably still going to be about upper 20s to low 30s with all that snowpack. And again, you see those lows at night. I mean, everywhere, pretty much well into the teens. I mean, even I won't pick out individual cities, but all the way down to the coast even. I mean, it's going to be very, very, very cold. So something we're going to have to kind of watch out for with this event. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of stop there. I'll leave these probabilities up here. I'm going to stop the recording.